It's emes. Okay, Zok the Heilige Mishnah. We're at the Heilige Mishnah on Daf Yud Chesam and Beis. I believe we're starting the third parak of Taanis. Beautiful. Zok the Heilige Mishnah. Seder Tainius Elu Ha'omer. We revere Rishayna. The Taanis that we said until now means, Rashi says, in Ovar's man revere Rishayna Shal Yoyre, if the first period of rain passes, and we didn't have rain yet, then Mis'an Bahon Kaseder Azeh, the halachas that we learned up until this point in the Masechta are applicable. So when a certain time comes, Yechidim fast, and then everybody fasts, and then everybody fasts Taanis Chomer for 3 days, and then everybody fasts for 7 days. So that's how that works if it doesn't rain. Avol Tzmachim Sheshanu. But what if things grew wrong? Rashi says you planted wheat and something else grew. Thorns grew, or chuch, or chuch. I don't know what chuch is. So tachas chidiyot chuch, tachas sori basha, different type of wheat. The product didn't grow properly, meaning it was a mutation. Something weird happened. So then masrin alein, then right away we don't wait at all, because that in itself is an instant sign of problems. And there you start with the last series of fasts, the most harmonic of fasts, because that's a clear sign that there's a terrible problem going on. And also, if it started to rain, then it stopped for 40 days, Rashi says, Ben Geshem Lageshem Ben Reviri Shoin Lishnia Simin B'Tzarisi. It's a simin of not a total hunger, but a scarcity. The Pneishi Makas B'Tzaris, because it's a Makas B'Tzaris, as the Mishnah says. And the Gemara is going to analyze exactly what's a Makas B'Tzaris. And there's a famous saying that is when everybody else loses their job, that's called a recession. And when you lose your job, that's called a depression. So we're going to soon see the difference between the different levels of difficult times. On average, you can have a good year we see up next to West Coast, also for 2 weeks. It's a problem, and the Gemara discusses that. That's right. What if the rain rained really appropriate for plants, but not for trees? And we learned a while ago that for trees you need much more hard rain, versus tzmachim we want a lighter rain. Or it rained very hard, but it didn't rain very well service plants. Or it rained both ways to satisfy both the ilan and the tzmachim, but it didn't rain in a fashion that would fill up the cisterns with water that we need to drink. And the Gemara is going to explain exactly what type of rain does each of these things and what conditions create these problems. Masriin alayimiyat. Once again, that's something that we don't wait. That's something that we instantly start treating like chomer, meaning like the third set of 7 fasts with all the chumras. What if you have a city that didn't rain in? And this is what the doctor was referring to a minute ago. We learned that that's a klola. It's a klola if it rains in one area and it doesn't rain in another area. That is a klola. Zok the Heilige Mishnah weiter. Oisa ir misana, that city that doesn't get rain will have to fast. Umisra, and does the serious fast. But but these areas around it, they have to be concerned, but not as concerned. Misanois v'loy masrios. Let's see Rashi. Oisa ir misana umisras v'chol saviv oisel misanois v'loy masrios. Zok Rashi ulufichach misanois. Why do all the other cities have to fast if by them it's raining and by them everything is going wonderful? Zok Rashi, I just want to see if I can find the hay in the Bach. The Bach says, Mipnei she'oisa ya'ir shelo yardu le'geshamim teilech liknes atzfua ba'oisa ir where was yardu geshamim v'yibarot. Sure, we may have plenty of tefua in our city, it might have rained. But you know what? We're going to have so many foreign buyers. What causes the price of real estate to go up? There's so many foreign investors dumping their money here that it's causing prices to skyrocket, like in Yerushalayim, right? That's where the government makes all these rules. If you don't live in it, the taxes are higher. They try to discourage investment. I'm not sure that's a sound policy, but whatever the case is, if you're living in a city where you have produce, but you're going to be swarmed by the neighborhoods around, that's also going to cause a problem for you. It's the opposite. They don't fast, but they do the masriyos, which is the extra tefillos, maybe the blood, the shofar, the nenu. The chain ear sheyesh ba dever le'aleinu oimapoilas. So dever means people are dying because of a magefa. That would be called maybe something like COVID. Oimapoilas, or there's tornadoes that are knocking buildings down. Oisair misana umisras. That city itself has to do everything. And once again, Rabbi Kiva says masriyos for misanas. They don't have to fast, but they do the davening. Okay. Zok the heilige Mishnah weiter. Ezeu dever. What? How many people have to die in a city for it to be classified as a dever? I'm pretty sure here it's talking about people, because we're going to see in a second. Dever in Mitzrayim was animals. Yeah. So Ir HaMoitzia Chomesh Me'osh Rakum, a city that has 500 people. I think that would be a relatively small city. V'yotzu mimenu Gimel Mesim v'Gimel Yomim Zechazeh. And you had 3 people die, one after the other. That's considered a magefa. I'm just wondering what that ratio is. It's 1 to the first one is 1 to 500. The second one is 1 to 499, and the third is 1 to 498. What? Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Right. Consecutive days. Right. So we have to see that there's a system here and it's happening. That's right. Okay. Zog to Gemara. Hareza Dever. I'm just going to look back in the Bach to make sure there's no correction we have to make. Pachos Mikan. If it's less than that amount, then ain't a Dever. Al Elam Asrin B'Choma. Until now, we were discussing things where in that city you have to go all out, and if you don't live in the city, you have to either be Masana like Masriya or Masriya like Masana, depending if you hold like Rabbi Kiva or not. But there are certain things that even if they happen in one area, everybody, all of Klal Yisrael, has to be Masriya. Rashi says Masriya B'Chomakim im. Let's look at the Vav and the Bach again. Im Niru Baspamya. I guess that means Spain. Masrin Bavel. Even in Bavel, they're going to be Masriya. Or Bavel, Masrin Baspamya. Kidikatani Taima. Is that what our school says? Is Espamya Spain? Or is it somewhere else? It won't be in the, I mean, it's on Rashi, so I'm not sure. Kidikatani Taima Beseifa. What's the reason? The Mishnah is going to tell us shortly. The list of items, the list of conditions that the Mishnah is going to discuss now are things that tend to spread in waves, similar to COVID, right? It spreads from place to place. Eventually, it makes its way around. Oh, Daf Kamen, if women die, it's not considered a Magefa. Why? So you can't bring a right from that. Wow. So Rashi says, in B'mokim Echad, he Masrina Leah Kol HaShoymin, anybody who hears Kidei Shaloi Tovei Aleim, because we don't want that condition to reach here. Got to close your borders. Zakta Mishnah Baita. Al Elam Masrin B'Chol Mokim Al Shidafain. Shidafain is when it becomes windy and it dries out the tefua, so it ruins the tefua. I think it's from a ruach mizrachis. It's a strong wind that dries everything out. While hayirakin is a physical, it's an ailment on a person, not on tefua. If people are suffering from yirakin, their face turns green. While arba is grasshoppers who eat you out of house and home. While chasil is another type of insect that does the same. Rashi is mishakeles b'nei adam. There's wild animals running around attacking people. If you go walking at night in the city of Toronto, it's commonplace to see coyotes running around the street, foxes running around the street. I've seen coyotes and I've seen foxes running around the street.
I've seen videos. Yes, right over here. I tried to roll it over. Really? Yeah.
Valacherev, Valacherev, and if there's Chayolos Rashas, Hahoichin Larig, Lahashis, B'Chamakim, if there's bands of robbers or armies that are killing people. So all these things is Masrina, wherever you are, if Neshi Makam Alechas, this is something that's going to travel and eventually going to reach you, so you have to be mispal because it's personal. Maisa Sheyord is a Kedim Yerushalayim Arei. There was a recess in Congress, and the Bezin, I guess, had a break, so they went home to their cities, and they saw a huge problem in one of the cities. They were Taanis on all of Klal Yisrael. Al Shanira Kamale P Tanner Shidafain Ashkelon. They saw a very small amount of Tvua that were suffering from Shidafain in Ashkelon, and because of that, they were geyser everywhere that they have to fast. Ashkelon Rashi is Be'eretz Plishtim. Okay, now we need help. Where is Ashkelon? Ashkelon, well, our Ashkelon
Mediterranean
is near Gaza. It's near Gaza. Is that what it meant over there, Eretz Plishtim?
Yeah, just north of Gaza. That's the city just north of Gaza.
So even then, it was called Eretz Plishtim?
Yes, it's one of the 5 Plishtim cities.
Right.
Okay, we better not let this get out to the mainstream media. Okay.
Well, so all of those cities are in Jewish hands now, except for Gaza. Ashkelon, Gat, we had Kiryat Gat is in our hands, Ashdod, and there's another one.
Ekron, I think is one.
Ekron, right.
It doesn't work that way. They cherry pick. Very good. So come on, weiter. But goes to Taanis also. 2 children were eaten up by wolves in Avar Yardi. So that was already a klala for everybody because these animals are running around. Rabbi Yosy Omer, they just appeared in places where people live, where they don't belong. When you see a fox running around in the city or a coyote running around, that's not normal. And the government shouldn't be saying, it's fine, nature, we're infringing on their habitat. It's a big sorrow, it's a very big danger when wild animals are coming out into cities because they pose a great danger. We fast for it. All of Klal Yisrael fast when these things happen. And our government says, put out more green bins so you can feed them better.
Maybe they'll eat the raccoons.
There was a video of that with the girl running around with the raccoons, but there was a poor guy walking his dog.
They're coming in for the roadrunners because people in the city speak.
Yep. It's unbelievable.
Wow.
Okay, let's do the Gemara weiter. Al Elam Asriyan the Shabbos. On the following conditions, you even daven on Shabbos. Al Ira Shektifu Nochem, if a city becomes surrounded by Goyim, a Nahar, or a river that's going to threaten to flood the city, Val Svina Hameterefes Bayam, and if there's a ship that's bobbing in the yam like a cork in a bathtub, in danger of capsizing, and this is even if it's a yochid, we could daven for. Rabbi Yosy Omer, we don't daven, but Lazara, you could scream and call for help, like we learned in the earlier Gemara. You can call Hatzalah, you can call the Coast Guard, you can call the army to do things that are practical, but below Latzaka, you're not allowed to cry out to Hashem on Shabbos. Shimon HaTemini Omer, Af al Hadever. For Dever as well, you're allowed to cry out to daven on Shabbos, but Chachamim did not agree to him. Next, Dr. Mishnah, I'll call Tzara Shaloi Tohu. On a Tzara that shouldn't come upon us. Rashi just listen to Ma'ayinakut, because it means you're davening for a Tzara that does come, but the expression Shaloi Tohu, Alat Shaloi Tohu Tzibur, Masriin Aleim, once again, you're Masriya, Chutz Me'roiv Gesham, unless you have a condition called Roiv Gesham. Now, we already learned that Roiv Gesham, if you have too much rain in one place and not enough in another place, there you do daven. So Rashi tells us over here, Roiv Gesham means something slightly different. Lav going to Yordal Ir Achas, Like we learned earlier. Rabbi Yehuda.
Rain everywhere.
So but that's what it means. It rained too much. So it's not ruining the tefillah. It's not rain that's ruining the tefillah, which would be similar to the condition we discussed earlier. Rather, it's just a little bit too much rain and it's inconvenient. It's muddy. Maisa, there's a story. This is a famous story. So they told Chania Magal, he was a big tzaddik, a Talmud Chacham, he was a leader, and they told him, Chania Magal, Hispalel sheyerdu geshamim, please daven that it should rain for us. Omer Lem, he told them, where's your umbrella? You think I'm going to daven for you? Where's your umbrella? So he told them, Tza'u v'echnisu tanurei psachim b'shvil shlo yamuku. Your Pesach ovens are in the courtyards. They're made out of cheres. You asked me to daven because you think I could be poila, it's rain for you, but I see your clay ovens are still outside of the yard, you're going to get ruined. So if you really thought I could help you, your clay oven should be inside. Now the Achronim ask, I don't understand. How is it possible that they would even keep their clay ovens? Their clay ovens, they had ovens that weren't Makabal Tumah. They were Berleah last year from the Korban Pesach, which means they have noiser in the walls. So you can now bake the Korban Pesach this year with it because it'll be noiser. So the Achronim explained that the clay ovens here are not the ovens from last year. They're brand new ovens that they were going to use for this year. And he says you should be taking them in.
What's wrong with learning Iranian that they were brand new?
That's what we're trying to bring out. We're trying to bring out.
Fried eggs this morning, right? Eggs don't last 3 days, but they're brand new eggs.
I hear. So Zaktimar Hispalel he daven below your dugsham in Tzedishka Gangen, and they told him, you see, that's why we didn't bring in our oven. Ma also, what did he do? Og Uga, he drew a circle around himself. V'amad b'soicha, and he stood in the circle. V'amar lefonim, Rebbeinu Shalayla, Banecha samu pnei malai. Your children put their face to me. They're relying on me. Shani kiven bayis lefonecha, because you know we're buddies. I'm close with you, Rebbeinu Shalayla. Therefore, Nishbani b'shimcha agadol. I'm swearing on your name. She'eni zaz mikan. I will not move from here. Ad sheterachem al banecha, until you have rachmanas on your children. So I once actually tried something just like this. When I came to Eretz Yisrael, I was told by Yosy Lipschitz, or Rabbi Yosef Lipschitz, that I should go to Reb Chaim Brim and ask him if he would learn with me. Chaim Brim Zatzal was a big gadol, and he said the reason why I'm suggesting you go ask him to learn with you is because until now he had a chavrusa every week with Lezer Wyman. And Lezer Wyman just left Eretz Yisrael and moved back to Lakewood. So I know there's an open slot. So why don't you go ask? And he told me a very interesting story as to how Lezer got the Seder. Anyway, so I go knock on Reb Chaim Brim's door, and I say, "Hi, my name is Yosy Simon, and I'm here to read your regards from Lezer and then ask you if I could take over his Seder." So he said, "Thank you very much. No." So I said, "But I really want to learn with you, and I'm here from America 1 year, and please, sorry, I can't enough time." So I told him, "I'm not leaving your house." I did the same thing with Chaim. I'm not leaving your house until you promise me that you're going to learn with me every single week, once. So he says, "Okay, don't leave my house." And he just walks away and he ignored me. So I'm sitting there, it's very uncomfortable, but I figured it was a do or die situation. And it's about 45 minutes go by, and his wife says, Chaim, and his wife said, "You can't let this madman sit here, get rid of him." And I said, "I'm not leaving until you promise me." So they said, "Okay, I'll live with you once a week. Kachava, live with me once a week." So now it's natural. I discussed learning with Chaim Brim once a week, all the time I was there. Mother's related to her. Mother's related to her. Zok to Gemara. So Zok to Gemara. So what happened? His chiluk gesham minatim. So it started dripping a little bit of rain. Amar Shvachani Mag says, No. Loikach sha'alti. That's not what I asked. Elagishmei boyroi sichin u'ma'oros. I needed to rain as I get, so that it should fill up all of the cisterns. So his chil leid v'zaf. So then it started raining with a vengeance. Amar, he said, No. Loikach sha'alti. Elagishmei rotzoin rocha unadava. I needed to be perfectly nice, calm rain that'll give the trees what they need, that'll give the Israelim what they need, and that'll fill all the cisterns. And then Yordu Ketikna. And there was so much rain that the valley around Yerushalayim was getting filled up. It was getting pretty flooded. until people started moving to higher ground because of how much rain there was. They told Chani Amagal, just like you daven that it should rain, please daven that the rain should stop. They had what's called a soapbox. There was a stone in the square that someone would stand on when he wanted to make a public announcement, such as, I lost something, if anyone found it, please bring it back. If that gets covered over with rain, then there's enough rain that I'm going to ask for it to stop. In other words, I'm not asking for it to stop, everything's going to be just fine. Shalach le Shimon ben Shetach. Shimon ben Shetach said to Chani Amagal, what you did, and how you like sort of bullied the Rebbeinu Shalom, it's a shtickle aggressive. Il malech Chani ata, if it wasn't for who you are, Gojrani alecha nidun, I would put you into cherem for being so aggressive with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Aval ma'asalo, what should I do with you? Shata b'schata lefnei hamokim. You do aveira sometimes. You do things that are incorrect, improper. But Hashem still does what you want, just like a son. Sometimes a child doesn't do exactly what his father wants him to do, but nevertheless, a father has rahmanas on the son, and he fulfills his children's desire anyway. Your parents are happy with you, and they just rejoice with the fact that you're there. So you're so close to the Rebbeinu Shalom, you can get away with certain demands that a normal person wouldn't be able to get away with. What happens if they're in the middle of they set up a fast, and it started to rain before Netzach Hama? So the halach is lo yashlimu. They don't have to continue to fast, so they'll stop fasting. What if it didn't start raining until after Netzach? Then yashlimu, then they have to finish the fast.
They started the night before?
Yeah, it could be this is talking about a serious fast. That's how I understood it. Rabbi Elazar Omer, kodim chatzos lo yashlimu la'achar chatzos yashlimu, and the Mefarshim explain what's the svar of Rabbi Elazar. It's because the Talmidei Chachamim don't eat before chatzos, so therefore their day starts chatzos. Ma'aseh shegozu Taanis belud. They were gozer Taanis in Lud. There was no rain. And it started to rain before chatzos. No Taanis today. Adarabah, today's a Yom Tov. The Rebbeinu Shalom answered our tefillas. The Yotsu, the Achlu, the Shasu, the Asu, Yom Tov, and they made a Yom Tov. Ubo bein Arbaim, and in the afternoon, we karu Halal Hagadol. They said Halal Hagadol, and Halal Hagadol is not the Halal that we say now Chanukah. Halal Hagadol is the Kila Elam Chasli that we say on Shabbos before Baruch Shomar. We say that capital that every pasuk ends with Kila Elam Chasli. The reason why we specifically say that is because it says Noisin Lechem L'chol Basar Kila Elam Chasli. We learned in the Gemara, I think in Brachos, the reason why that's such a chashuv tefillah is because it talks about how Kadosh Baruch Hu is Mefarnes Klal Yisrael. That's why that's such a chashuv tefillah. Seder Taanis Ha'elu Ha'amar B'Revi'ah Rishon. The problem is it says that these are the Seder Taanis that said B'Revi'ah Rishon. Meaning, if the whole Revi'ah Rishona passes, then we say these Taanis. Then we have these fasts. We're a many fact Gemara. Revi'ah Rishona Ushniya Lishoil Shlisha Lisanis. The Rashi says other words. So let's see Rashi. Revi'ah Rishona Ushniya Lishoil Sha'af Api Shelo Yordu Geshamim Loy B'Rishona V'Loy B'Shniya. Even if it didn't rain by the first Revi'ah or by the second Revi'ah, they're still davening, but they didn't start taking serious measures. The Kashem Nisin, the Katani say the Taanis Elu Ha'amar B'Revi'ah Rishona. Raisa Adam. So there's a steer between the Mishnah and the Raisa, because the Mishnah says once the Revi'ah Rishona passes, you're already creating the Taanis. Yet the Raisa says it's only after the third Revi'ah passes where you start making these Taanis. Amar Yehuda, how do we make the Brisa and the Mishnah shtim? Hachigamar. Seder Taanis, Amar, the Seder Taanis that we discussed, Amasai. Bisman Shiyatza Revi'ah Rishona, Ushniya Ushlishis. If these three periods passed, below Yardu Geshamim, and it didn't rain, that's when you wait until the third Revi'ah passes, or the time for the third Revi'ah passes, and that's when you start taking the serious measures. But what if it rained on time? But some other weird thing happened, which is a siman kola immediately, which means they planted and nothing grew. Or you planted and it became a different plant. So clearly there's an obvious xer here. Then you don't wait till the end of the third rain. You have a problem right away. That's why you are masriya right away. If there's no rain, you have to wait for the third revia to take serious measures because you don't know that it's a siman kola until the third rain. But if after the first rain something weird happens, that's already a siman kola right away. Amar Dafka nishtanu. When we say that it's an immediate concern, is if the tfuah changed, let's say you planted wheat and it grew dandelions. Abul yavshu, but if the wheat grew, but they just dried out, loy, then you would not fast right away. The Braisa doesn't say yavshu, the Braisa says nishtanu. The akut, it grew. The tfuah grew a little bit. Even after it dried up, Zok Rashi, it continued to grow a little bit. So Ma'u de Tema, Aknas Milsehi, you might say that the fact that it grew a little bit means something, and therefore it's worth fasting because we can fix it. Kamash Malon, that it's too late. Now I touched this one way, but there's another way to touch it. Ma'u de Tema, Aknas Milsehi, that since you see it's growing already, so we don't need to fast because it's going to be okay, or it's going to be okay. Kamash Malon, that we still need to fast. And Rashi brings down both of these pshatim. So let's see Rashi, 3 lines up in the skinny lines. Since they got a little bit better, they started to grow even though they dried out. So therefore we should have it. That there's no hope. We don't have to daven because it's going to start growing by itself.
Is there any source of when we stop davening for a person who's sick?
Why would we ever stop davening?
No, I have to go over the shadow. But not about shadow. It's after the opinion. I haven't emptied my heart down enough.
Speak up so that we're hearing you.
After all,
Right?
I people still have film shots going. I want to know if you put something in the film after time. So what's the
Suda Seda.
yeah, they're better, right? But I said, when I was told, like a lifelong condition, they're usually better, it's still a heart transplant, isn't it?
Yeah.
I was thinking the opposite. I remember what Shlomo once said, when Ruben's daughter Neba passed away, but she didn't pass away right away. She was brain dead. And Shlomo said there's no hope. Like there's nothing to talk about. So that's what I meant to say. Like, is there ever a time when it's Yoshu, meaning when we say maybe this is a
I'll tell you something, my father was wrong, got cellulitis, and he got better. And then he needed a heart operation, he got better. And then he made a series of death. Shortly afterwards, he got cancer to death.
Okay, so let's see the Gemara. So the Mishnah told us earlier that if the rain stops between Geshem and Geshem, it's called B'tzoyers. So if my makas B'tzoyers, what is it B'tzoyers? Amar Bido Amar Rav Makkah Hamavil de B'tzoyers. It's a makkah that's going to lead to a shtickle hunger. Amar Rav Nachman, what does this mean? Naira Anahira B'tzoyers. If, and we'll turn on to the Testament base, if it's just a neighborhood that's or a city that does not have rain, but they could ship things around using water. In other words, there's rivers in between that we could move goods around. That's not a good thing. It's a b'tzarta. But if it's medinasa, where you can't move food around by ship, you're going to have to load up trucks, or in those days, donkeys, to transport food. Kafna, that's already a huge tzara, and that is called a kafna. That's one shot. The other shot Rashi has is if your well dries up, but it's easy to divert water from another water source close by, that's called B'tzurta. But if it's far away, where you can't divert water from so far, that's a serious problem. That's on. From Abchanina, what happens if saw besela? To buy a saw of grain is a seller, but which is very, very expensive, but ushchicha, but there's plenty to buy. You just have to come up with the money. Then beturta, that's called a beturtis. It's scarce, but it's not a hunger. But our bo, the loy shchicha, but what if tvu is cheap? Tvu is cheap, and you can get 4 saw for a seller. But below shchicha, either you can't find to buy or there's no money around, kaftan, that's considered a hunger. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, or if it's not around, it's like someone comes to a store and says, "How much do you charge for a pair of socks?" He says, "I charge $2." He says, "Really? I want to order 20 pairs because your neighbor wants $6 for these socks." He says, "Yeah, but I'm sold out." So if you're sold out, it doesn't matter how cheap you are, right?
I had that issue with a guy who always told me when I was selling my dad merchandise that he always was able to sell cheapest. My father told me, next time he tells you that you can get it for $2, tell him that you want 10,000 dozen.
Right.
So that's what he told me. So I said, "You need to 10,000." He said, "Well, I'm out." I said, "When I'm out, I sell it for $1."
Amar Rabbi Yochanan, lo yishanu al bizman shamois bezoil. That's if you can get a hold of money. Who pairs biyoker, even though pairs are expensive, but people have money. In other words, inflation. Aval mois biyoker. But if nobody has money, who pairs bezoil, even if pairs are cheap, but nobody even has money to pay for those cheap pairs, masrinu lamiyah, that's considered a hunger. Here and I remember, I remember when you get 4 sons for seller, but nevertheless, there were people who were hungry. There was people who had inflated bellies, swollen bellies from hunger, even though food was so cheap. Less is because there wasn't even enough money to buy the inexpensive grain. So an economic crisis is also considered a tzara that we have to daven for right away. What type of rain will help plants but not trees? We have light rain but not heavy rain. What type of rain will work for ilan, not for tzmachim? How could it rain both for tzmachim, for ilanis, but not for cisterns? There's rain that rains heavy, which will accommodate trees. There's rain which rains light, which will accommodate plants. But there's not enough rain to fill up the cisterns. So all those cases, we understand the practicality of what happens to cause that condition. When our Mishnah said that if you have enough rain to satisfy the cisterns, but it won't satisfy the plants or the trees, what type of rain will do that? So after Gemara, it comes down and touch a dump that sure it'll fill the cistern, but it's going to flush away and ruin the plants and even the trees. Mashrin ala haylanos b'fraisa Pesach. B'fraisa Pesach, which means Pesach time. There we will daven and we will make a big tefillah if the trees don't have the rain that they need. Ala baris shichnem aris afilu b'fraisa chad. But for baris shichnem aris, even at the end of the summer, you're still going to daven for rain then, because then you desperately need rain for people to drink. Okay, so Rashi said, but al baris shichnem aris, you also daven im lo yordu lem geshamim because they need to have rain. Afilu b'fraisa chad lahashkis zroyim ves behemta. So even at the end of the summer, where you don't need anymore so much rain, you still are davening because you have to be able to feed zroyim and behemoths. But no matter when this happens, if there's a problem, no matter when it is in the year that people don't have drinking water, because everybody needs to have drinking water. What is the miyad? So the Gemara, so you immediately, by the next Monday, you have to start fasting if people don't have enough rain to drink. Rashi says, so where do they start davening? Not everywhere, only in the communities that don't have rain. That's where they're masrin. The askara, which is a physical disease that people are being afflicted with, bisman sheyesh b'misa. If it's askara that's causing misa, masrin aleh, and Rashi says shehi mishuleches ma'aleches u'meisimba. It's spreading and people are dying. So then we're Masriya. If it's not spreading and people aren't dying from it, then you're not Masriya. Umasrina had guvoi, which are insects that destroy your tfuah b'cholshu, even if it's a little bit, because we know that there's a lot more where they came from and it's going to spread. Rab Shimon Lazarmer af ala chagav. Chagav is an insect where it's a shaila how much it'll eat. Rashi says it doesn't eat as much as arba, but Rab Shimon ben Elazar holds even for a chagav you must take serious measures. Taner Bad Masrin al hailanois v'shar shnei hashivim. If yes,
No, I'm just going back to where I was talking about Ashkara. I mean, we're supposed to do everything we can to save someone. So why do we wait till someone dies in order to be misread?
well, to save a person who's sick, you give him medical attention, you daven for him. Masriya means we get the whole community together and say these tefillas. That's something you only do if it's a communal issue.
Okay.
So let's see what the Gemara says over here. Not on the Shemitah year. You know why? Because in the Shemitah year anyway, everything's after. So therefore, we don't make a big tefillah if the Ilonis are in danger of dying. Because everyone needs to have drinking water all the time.
You mean even during Shavuos, we need birds?
That's right.
And what about the Ani? We don't care for the Aniyim?
Mamish, what you said. Even if the Aniyim get from Hefker, so we need to make sure that the fruits will grow properly on the trees. You're Masriyan on the Ilanis in other years, not Shemitah. For anything, for all things that would grow by themselves, but you don't allow to plant anything, but anything that will grow by themselves, you could daven for, because Aniyim need to have this sustenance. Tanya Amar B'Elazar Bar Prata, Yom Shachar Beis Hamikdash, Nasu Geshamim Tzimukim Lo'olam. From the time that the Beis Hamikdash was charred, the rain became like tzimukim. Rashi says it comes difficult. It used to come on schedule, and now it comes with difficulty. Some years it rains more, sometimes it rains less. Sometimes it comes right on schedule. And sometimes they don't come on schedule. Then I'm sorry. So the Gemara elaborates. What is it like? The Rav gave his Eved all the money that he needs for the week on Sunday. Now he can prepare a beautiful challah for Shabbos because he has plenty of time to prepare. He has the supplies with which he needs to prepare. Nimtzis Isa nefis kitikna. He'll be able to make a delicious bread, delicious challah for Shabbos. But it'll be eaten properly. But everything comes last minute and late. So how much time does he have to prepare his food for Shabbos? Nimtzis Isa nefesh kitikna. He's not going to be able to let things rise. He's not going to be able to prepare it properly, and therefore with a year that has a lot of rain. He gave him all of the money that he needs for the week at the beginning of the week. When you grind in the mill, there's always some residue that gets stuck at the bottom of the mill. Now, whether or not you grind a lot or a little, the same amount of residue always gets stuck. So the greater batch you could put into the mill, the less you're going to end up losing. So therefore, if you have all your panos, if all the rain comes at the beginning, then it'll end up working out better. There'll be less loss. And Rashi tells us that there's a direct connection to rain, because Rashi says that every time it rains, there's winds that evaporate and absorb, and the ground absorbs. So if there's a whole bunch of smaller rains, all that's going to come out each time from every single rain. If it rains a lot at the beginning, then we're going to lose much less, and therefore we'll have much more water. Okay, Zok to Gemara. The nimtzas isa oicheles minakur kamoy oicheles minakav. And the same thing, when you're kneading the dough in a bowl, the bowl absorbs stuff, and the larger the dough, the less you lose. He gets it in small batches. The same amount that the Rechaim would have absorbed from the large amount, it's going to take each time from the smaller amounts from each batch. So therefore, you're going to end up with much less. So too, there'll be much less dough at the end of the day. When there's a lot of rain, someone is mixing water with earth to create cement. If he has a lot of water available, then first he'll have plenty of water to be able to make a good consistency on the tit, plus he'll have extra water if he needs to make more tit. But if he doesn't have enough water, then first of all, he's not going to have enough water to really create a good consistency on the cement, and he won't even have any extra if he needs to make more. All of Klal Yisrael were regular to Yerushalayim. They didn't have anything to drink. It's a beautiful story. Nakdim Ben Gurion went to some wealthy guy who had plenty of cisterns full of water that he had saved. He said, please lend me 12 of these wells so that I could sponsor them for the Regolim, and I'll pay you back. In other words, I'll make sure that it rains, and in short order, your cisterns will be all full again. And if I don't deliver that rain, then I rain and that was an absorbent amount for water. I'm going to severely overpay you if I don't deliver the water at the right time back. The couple is man. They said, I'm going to have those cisterns filled by this date. What happened was the deadline arrived, and it was the morning of the deadline. So the deadline was December 30th at midnight, or actually it was December 30th at nightfall, and December 30th the morning arrives, and there's no rain. So b'shachar shalach loy, in first thing in the morning, the owner of the bar said, "Shigarli oy my pay up, either get me the rain or get me the money." Shalach loy, Nakdim says, "What are you worried about? Adayin yesh li zman kalayim kula shali. I have time. Kalayim kula shalihu, the whole day is mine. B'tzarayim in the afternoon, it's already starting to get late. Shalach loy again, Shigarli oy mayim oy moyish yesh li biyotcha. Again, Nakdim says, "Calm down. Shalach loy adayin yesh li shoros b'yoyim." B'mincha, now it's already right before nightfall. Shalach loy, Shigarli oy mayim oy moyish yesh li biyotcha. And again, Shalach loy adayin yesh li shoros b'yoyim. The guy's laughing. Are you crazy? You're running out of time. Omar, he said, it hasn't rained all year. And now you think right now it's going to rain? And now it's going to rain. So what happened? Nakdim and Megorian is up, his back is up against the wall. The Adon, the big boss, went into the Beis HaMerchet laughing that I'm going to take a bath now, and then I'm going to have plenty of money. While he was going to the bathhouse, he went to the Beis HaMikdash to daven, and he wasn't so happy. He was stressed. He put on his talis and started davening. You think I did this for my own honor? I did it for you, Rebbeinu Shalom, so that there should be water, so the Oil Regolim will have what to drink. So immediately the clouds came up on the horizon, and the Yordu Geshem started to rain. There was so much water, they filled up, and it was even more water than he took. When the Adon came out of the Beis HaMerchet, he came out of the Beis HaMikdash, they met each other. Amar lo, he said, Taili, the Mayim, Yoser, Nakdim says, I gave you back more water than I took. I want you to pay me for the extra water that I caused it to rain, because you got more water than we took from you. Amar lo, the other answered, I know that Hashem turned the world over for you, but there's one problem. I still have a way around it. I'll be able to get my money out of you. Sure, it rained, but it rained after Shkia, and therefore it's already nightfall, which is past the deadline, so you still owe me the money, and the rain, I get. So what happened? Chazav and Nichnas LeBeis HaMikdash, Makdim and Begoy went back into the Beis HaMikdash. This Atev Amad Tefillah, V'Amar Lefanav, Rebbeinu Shalom. Hoida sheyesh lach ahuvim b'olamecha. Could you show this guy that you have friends in this world and show that you got my back? And then the clouds moved away and the sun shined. Hashem brought the sun out to show that it's still daylight. Like the Shah Amar Adon, Ilu, like Niktira Chama, Hoyali Pischem Peh Alecha. If the sun wouldn't have come out, I would have had something on you. But now I can, and we'll stop here. And Mishnah will be mamshech tomorrow, even though we're right near 2 dots, but it's running very late. And we finished this beautiful story of Nakim Meguri. The Rebbe should help that we should, anytime we dive into the Rebbe Shalom, we shouldn't have to squeeze and pressure. We should get our tefillas answered right away.
Story reminds